been 2 years.
Blog Talk Radio.
You tune in to Hype Talk Radio, the voice of the Midwest.
What's happening, everybody? You are now tuning in to the Producer's Corner with Spud Too Tight. The show will be geared towards upcoming and seasoned music producers to share and educate each other about what tools to use and what steps to take to become an industry standard music producer. And for those of you that would like to contact me for any questions or suggestions, hit me up at spudtooti@gmail.com. And that's SPUDTOOTIGHT@gmail.com. And I'm also on MySpace, man. From a MySpace account, hit me up at www.myspace.com/Spud2Tight. And if you didn't get a chance to listen to last week's episode, I was discussing musical influences and the musical influences that are in my arsenal as a listener, as a fan. You know, I think it's real important and it's real crucial to have any influence in your life. I mean, you know, being a creator, if you consider yourself to be a creative person, having those influences that you guys have in common definitely helps you set goals and gives you a direction and a map to follow as a creator yourself. Not to become that person, but you definitely want to develop the habits and become a hard worker, like the major influences that you should have in your life and you want to become a part of and move into that direction. Your profession as a musician, producer, singer, actress, whatever it is that you want to do, you know, having those influences in your life gives you, to me, it motivates me to become great, like some of the influences I've mentioned in the last episode: Teddy Riley, Quincy Jones, Michael Jackson, Prince, Jimi Hendrix, George Duke, and Herbie Hancock. And you know, I got so in depth and details about so many of them, and I didn't get a chance to really touch on all of them that I wanted to. So, you know, this part of the show, I just kind of wanted to touch base a little bit more on my other two major influences as a musician, as a keyboard player. I've always looked up to Herbie Hancock and George Duke as my go-to guys for just becoming just an overall better player. You know, watching those guys and listening to them on their CDs, you know, just makes me feel like a beginner all over again. You know, even with the experience that I have being as a player, you know, it's just they, in my opinion, man, they just take it to another level of where music can go, and you know how great of a player you can be. And you know, I believe music, and along with some of the other art forms out there, you know, to me, I feel that you get better with age, you know, as time progresses and you get older. And I think a lot of it too, you know, even outside of the ability, because you know, a lot of us have great ability as players. You know, we have speed, we have great dexterity, but you know, for me as a player and as a musician, and I listen to other great players around me and on CDs and radios that I listen to, radio stations I listen to, and I listen to some of the jazz, the older jazz. You know, I think it's an ear development training. I believe these guys have been around for so long that they've heard so much music and different genres of music. You know, so it's just the experience, you know, that the ear has. You know, it's like the more you listen to, the more diverse you'll be as a musician. So I think a lot of it too is just, you know, with Herbie Hancock and George Duke, you know, having that background in jazz, having that background in R&B and pop, and also bringing that into fusion. Their jazz fusion background is just phenomenal. And again, it's as the ear progresses, it makes your playing ability progress also, because you know, you play what you hear, and if you're hearing something out of the ordinary, that's, you know, more of an advanced player, you know, then you tend to find yourself being a better player. Just because your ear is developing, it's going to translate into that ability for you to display that on the craft that you're working on. At least for me, I felt that I've always had great dexterity and great ability, speed, and just really great chops, and a lot of fancy runs and things. But I think as my ear developed, as I got older and I started listening to other music, having that ability to play what I hear allowed me to want to listen to more complex music. So that's when I started really getting into jazz at an early age. I was intrigued and totally inspired by Herbie Hancock as a jazz player, because Herbie, man, he came out with Rocket, I believe back in 85, 84, 85, 1985, 84. And, I was just a little kid back then, maybe 10, 11 years old, but, seeing him perform that on stage, I think at the Grammy Awards, with the break dancers and the suits, man, I still see it, man. They all were on stage, and, they were just kind of taking bits and pieces from the Rocket video and, making it to a live form, which is really hot and amazing to me. And Rocket was really what inspired me to get into, like, the heavy synthesizers and, want to getting into the jazz field at that time, because it was just like, wow, man, it's not traditional jazz. It was more street. Had a lot of street elements that I'm used to hearing with the hip-hop and R&B I was with to at the time. And it was a real Rocket was just that beat, man. It was, from the break dancers to everybody in the street, man, they were always playing that Rocket. And, listening to that, I wanted to find out who and what Herbie Hancock did also, aside from Rocket. So my mom and dad, they were really into Herbie Hancock, jazz listeners. And I put out the old Headhunters record my dad had, man, and first song I heard on the album was Chameleon, and that was funk to my ears, man, and that was just amazing. And being as a player, I immediately wanted to start playing, getting that riff and just getting that lead going, and which was cool because it was in B flat minor, and it's just kind of nice to get yourself familiarized with different keys. And that's another benefit of playing behind different influences and playing behind covers musically is getting a chance to play in different keys as a piano player. So I don't know as a player, but sometimes you can get in a habit of getting stuck in a particular scale or zone that you're familiar with, and now to get a chance to branch out and explore other avenues on the board and different ways of playing out of keys and different scales and things. So playing with covers really helped me get familiar with the keyboard and the scales and different chord progressions and things. So it was just really easy for me to get real familiar with the different keys on the board. But Chameleon was just such a funky song, and just going back to that record really brings back a lot of memories for me. And another song he did that I was real moved by was Come Running to Me. That song, man, I play kind of almost on a daily basis, especially when I'm just kind of zoning, just really getting into the mood of writing. I usually put that track on, and it inspires me in different ways every time I hear it. I don't know what it is about that song, but it's just the melodies, the changes, the progressions that he's using. It's just real inspiring. And again, when I hear it, it just inspires me in so many different ways. So hats off to Mr. Herbie Hancock for being my inspiration as one of the greatest keyboard and piano players I've ever witnessed, man. Thank you. And last but certainly not least, Mr. George Duke. Man, the thing about George Duke, George Duke is super, super funky to me, man. And, I pull from different people for different reasons and, different times and things, I pull from them. And, George, to me, when I listen to his music, man, he's got so much funk and, gospel and just a lot of soul background into him. And it was real easy for me to become a listener to George Duke, man, because he had so many of those elements in his music. And, as I got older, I started really listening and really trying to find out who's producing what. And, come to find out, man, George Duke has produced so many people that that I'm familiar with, and I had no idea that he was behind those records the whole time. And it was just amazing. I was like, gosh, man, aside from being a great keyboard player, a phenomenal keyboard player, he is a great producer as well. you know, not too long ago, my cousin and I were talking about George Duke, man.